Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 2nd, 2025 meeting of Glendale's Charter Review Committee. Item number 1 is roll call.
Please.
Okay. Committee members Durham,
Here.
Flower,
Here.
Garibian,
Here.
Haratunian, Karapetian,
Here.
Manasarian,
Here.
Meek, Megardician,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Povolitis,
Here.
Smith, Yu.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is report of the reporting secretary on the posting of the agenda.
Okay, the agenda for the October 2nd, 2025 Charter Review Committee meeting was posted on September 29th, 2025 on the bulletin board outside of City Hall.
All right, thank you. Next item is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of the agenda. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. The committee may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or discussion. The Charter Review Committee chair may refer the matter to staff for investigation or report. Do we have any speakers?
We have one speaker in the audience. Beth Brooks.
Please.
Thank you. I don't want to read it out, so I'd like you to look at the charter. I don't know if it's called Article 6, and then the ordinance 2.04.010 about council meetings, which says that you're supposed to have a meeting every week on Tuesdays. And April 30th, 2019, they changed that, at least as a motion, to 3 times a week. And I learned at the city council meeting on Tuesday that was allowable to just, in my opinion, violate the ordinance because there is no legal remedy for that ordinance. So Mr. Garcia basically told me that no court would take this. Didn't say I would sue, but that it's meaningless that they did that. They changed it to 3, even though the ordinance said it should be 4 times. It should be every week, excuse me, so 52 times a year. He said, and it basically also laughed at me, but he said basically that it doesn't matter. The mayor can do that. The city council can do that. So I want to know, what is the power and force of an ordinance? I mean, can you just take the policies and procedures set forth in an ordinance and by resolution throw that out? I mean, so if that's the case, why did they bother bringing up the mayoral ordinance about selection of mayor? Make a resolution and just say we can pick it. I mean, what is an ordinance then? I don't really understand what the ordinance is. If there's no legal remedy, if there's no fine or there's no penalty, does that mean they can just go to council and say, you know what, we don't want to do that? And why not next week pass a resolution that says twice a week? He told me I should think we're lucky we get actually 3 times a week, because Burbank I think gets 2. He told me, so I should be grateful we get 3, even though the ordinance says we get every week, which some months is actually 5 weeks. And I said because the city council actually has a lot of city business to take care of, and he told me they're taking care of it, they're just not taking care of what you want them to take care of. So I want to know, I am really angry, and I'm not angry because they're not taking care of, they should be taking care of the city business, and I hope that I'm, coming forth to people and saying, please help the needy, people who need help in the city, but to be told that you could just take an ordinance and basically throw it away. You have policies and procedures in an ordinance. You either amend that ordinance or I don't know what you do. But just to say that, well, the mayor can decide every year. We passed a resolution that the mayor can decide every year. Why not pass a resolution that the mayor can decide every week? Why do you even have an ordinance? Because there's no legal remedy, we can essentially get away with it. That's what I was told. We can get away with that. So I want to know what the power and force of an ordinance, I want to know. What is it? Why bother having any? Unless there's a penalty. People get penalized for having, stepping over a boundary, I guess, or building something, and then they get a penalty. But something like this, because there is no financial or legal penalty, the ordinance is meaningless? Because it's sort of in line with kind of what it says? That's not okay. And I hope that you do something about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Excuse me, Ms. Brooks. Can you repeat the Article 6
Yes,
section?
I don't know what it's called, if it's a chapter. It's Article 6, the little
Section.
thing,
Yeah.
2. Yeah, it's
Okay.
Article 6, 2, and then it's 2.04.010.
Thank you.
Chair, those are all
Anybody-
the requests to speak.
There's a caller?
No.
Okay. All right. Moving on to item 4 then, approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes. It's not consent, so we'll vote on them separately. First are the minutes of the Charter Review Committee meeting of September 4th, 2005. Does anybody have any corrections, additions, changes?
Could I just ask a point of clarification? Were these not voted on previously?
That's correct. I think they were in the agenda packet for those dates, except for the September 4th ones. And as we went back and we were getting ready for that council report that was supposed to occur this week, we noticed that those 2 minutes hadn't been actually acted upon.
Okay, thank you.
Now, we can take them all together as one vote, I think, if, do you?
Unless there's changes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if there's changes to any of them, we'll pull them, act on them separately.
Point of clarification
Sure.
for me. Since I left early last time, could I just vote on, I couldn't, right?
You can abstain if you'd like on the October, September 4th.
September
minutes.
4th, right. So I could do that and approve the other two.
We can, if we're taking them up all at once, can we note the abstention separately?
Yes.
Like we do on the consents? Okay.
Thank you.
Does anybody would like to make a motion, or are there more
I
questions?
was gonna abstain for the second, because there was a vote at the end that I was not here.
Okay.
I'll move to approve all 3 minutes.
Second.
All right, there's a motion to approve all 3 sets of minutes from Alan, a second from Carl. There are 2 abstentions noted in advance as to which meetings. Elizabeth, you're abstaining from which meeting?
September 4th.
September 4th, and September 4th as well, and Annie as well. So,
I was absent for 2 meetings, according to the minute, December 12th, May 1st. and,
perhaps we should take these separately at this point. Just, okay. Alan, would you want?
I'll move to approve the minutes of the meeting of September 4th, 2025.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
2 abstentions, 3 abstentions, vocalizing, thank you. Okay, so, does staff have the 3 abstentions noted?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion passes, the minutes are approved. Second, the minutes of December 12th, 2024.
I so move.
Move
I'll
approval.
second.
Oh, okay, everybody got that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? 2 abstentions.
It's you and Ms.
Denise and
Miller.
Rachel. All right. 2 down, 1 to go. The minutes of May 1st, 2025. Changes, corrections. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of May 1st, 2025.
Motion from the vice chair. Second?
I second.
Chris. Second from Elizabeth. Thank you. All right. All those in favor of approval say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. Can we note those for the record? All right, the motion passes. That was fun. Item 5, staff comments.
No comment. I actually just one comment. Obviously, we were supposed to have the discussion with the city council on Tuesday. As I noted to you, I sent you all an email that at the request of Councilmember Kasaki, and they pushed that item to November, first meeting in November. So when that happens, we'll give you the updated report, but it should be very, very similar to what we previously submitted.
Thank you. Item 6 is business discussion items. We don't have anything under that heading unless there's something staff wants to bring to our attention.
Can I just ask Mr. Flower a question? Would that report be updated for or would it just be carried forward to the November meeting?
The report to council?
Yes.
It will most likely just carry over. We might add something if there's any update from the discussion today, but most likely it'll be nearly identical to what we previously submitted.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No? Well, good question. All right, so that takes us to item 7, reports information. 7A is review of the civil service system provisions, specifically the Rule of 3, the length of the probationary period, and the eligibility list duration. I know we have a staff report. I'm looking forward to it. I was told in advance we have the presentations really set up in 3 blocks. So I kind of wanted to get everybody's sense. Would you like to hear the whole presentation and then consider the 3 items, or do you want to take them kind of serially?
I'd prefer to get the whole presentation.
Any other thoughts?
How long is the whole presentation? This is all of it?
Let's just go through it. Okay. All right. We'll take
So,
it.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, let me introduce you to Paula Adams, our Chief Human Resources Officer. You've already met Amy Martin, the Deputy Assistant Director of Human Resources, and you know Lucy Varpetian. They've worked on this presentation, the materials before you, and then they'll make the presentation.
Thank you.
So, good evening. Tonight, we'll be walking through some potential updates to the Glendale Civil Service System. The goal is very straightforward, to modernize, not eliminate our civil service structure so that it reflects contemporary employment practices, provides flexibility, and strengthens our ability to attract, hire, and retain top talent. This slide summarizes the big picture. Glendale Civil Service System has served the city well for decades, but like any structure, parts of it have become outdated. Our objective is to maintain the core principles of merit and fairness while introducing targeted adjustments that allow us to better meet today's workforce realities. Glendale has operated under a civil service system since the 1930s. It was created to ensure fair and merit-based employment, and that principle still matters today. However, over the years, elements of the system, especially in the charter, have become rigid and don't provide enough flexibility for current operational and workforce needs. That's why we're bringing forward several discussion items tonight for your consideration. Discussion item number 1 is the Rule of 3 in hiring. Currently, hiring managers can select from the top 3 ranked candidates on an eligibility list. An eligibility list is composed of the names of candidates who have successfully completed all parts of the examination and are placed in score order. The examination tests for key skills, knowledges, and abilities to perform the roles. This possible modification would expand flexibility, allowing departments to consider more candidates or even the entire eligibility list. The goal is to improve overall fit, speed up hiring processes, and support a diverse candidate pool. Here's an example of the Rule of 3. This example illustrates the current process. For now, only the top 3 scores are forwarded, even when other qualified candidates exist just below the cut. In practice, this can lead to situations where hiring managers are forced to make choices that may not be ideal for the department or the role. So there are clear benefits and some considerations to weigh. The pros: managers can focus on the best fit for their team. It helps avoid hiring candidates with strong test scores but poor references. and it broadens the candidate pool, supporting our hiring goals, and it reduces delays when one of the top candidates declines. And some of the cons are, there could be perceptions that hiring decisions are less objective. Without transparency, there's a risk of favoritism claims, and therefore clear rules and oversight would be needed to mitigate these concerns. There are several alternative models to consider. Banding, where candidates with certain score ranges are treated as equally qualified. The Rule of 5, which expands the candidate pool beyond the current 3. The Rule of 3 whole scores, which includes all candidates who earn one of the top 3 scores, avoiding tie-breaking issues, and removing the Rule of 3 requirement from the charter. These are alternatives to consider. Each of these approaches increases flexibility while maintaining merit-based principles. In this slide, it illustrates the banding example where all candidates who scored from 90 through 100 are considered for hiring. So that expands us from 3 to 4, illustrating this banding example. In the band could be more than 4. We just put this up for illustrative purposes. In this side, it illustrates the Rule of 5, which increases the candidate pool for hire to 5. Again, giving us more choices from which to hire. And in this slide, we are illustrating the Rule of 3 whole scores, which avoids tiebreakers and also expands the candidate pool for hire. Discussion item number 2, expanding the list of the probationary period. Currently, probation is typically 6 months or 12 months for managerial and designated roles. And it cannot exceed 12 months unless the employee is on a leave of absence or in a modified duty capacity due to a workplace injury. The possible modification would allow probation to be extended by up to 6 months of additional time with approval of the Chief Human Resources Officer. This provides departments with more time to evaluate performance before granting permanent status. So there are pros and cons to expanding the length of the probationary period. The pros are there's more time to evaluate people who are in complex leadership roles to show that they can perform at that level. It aligns the probationary period with the job complexity and learning curves, and it formalizes what is now informal extensions or coaching. And some of the cons are, it can impact employee morale by extending the period of uncertainty that comes with being on probation. There's potential for misuse if extensions are used in place of timely performance management, and consistency and fairness in applying extensions will be critical. Discussion item number 3 focuses on eligibility lists. Currently, these lists are valid for 2 years, which is mandatory for promotional lists. The possible modification would reduce the duration to 6 to 12 months. The goal here is to keep the candidate pool fresh, minimize delays caused by stale lists, and create more frequent opportunities for recruitment and applicants to apply for jobs. The pros with this is that the candidate pools stay more current and engaged. It reduces the time spent pursuing candidates who are no longer interested or who have moved on. It allows for more frequent recruitment cycles and refreshing job opportunities. On the flip side, with the cons, it may increase recruitment costs and administrative workload. Some candidates may expect longer list durations and may be frustrated by the change. Therefore, this is another area where balance between flexibility and practicality is key. All of these discussion items reflect a balancing act between modernization and preserving fairness. Any updates must maintain the city's long-standing commitment to merit-based systems and transparency. At the same time, we have to be practical and align these processes with our operational needs and economic realities. Collaboration with employee associations must continue throughout this process. So to summarize, we have reviewed 3 primary discussion items this evening: modifying the rule of 3 to increase flexibility in hiring, expanding the probationary period for better performance evaluation, shortening the eligibility list durations to keep candidate pools fresh. These are targeted, thoughtful updates that maintain core principles while improving effectiveness. Thank you. And again, we have our Assistant HR Director, Amy Martin, here, along with our Senior HR Analyst, Russ Kwan, and myself. Together, we're happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation. Do any members of the committee have questions for the staff regarding the report? Alan, and his hand went up first, so I'm going to start down there. Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm not sure if all of us know the hiring process in government. Do you mind taking us through the steps of what happens when a person applies, what the first interview looks like, second interview, et cetera?
So we post job bulletins normally on Mondays. And on the job bulletin, it will identify when the job bulletin closes. Normally, it's open for about a 2-week period. There are some job bulletins that we keep open on a continuous basis because we seem to always have opening in certain key areas. So it's either with a defined closing or it's continuous, posted on Mondays to governmentjobs.com. So the applicant goes onto the online system, submits their application. At the end of the application, generally there are some questions that we specifically ask to confirm that you meet the minimum qualifications for the role. It is then transported through an online portal. The time to apply closes, and then the HR analyst that is assigned goes through the applications to confirm that the minimum qualifications that are listed, that the applicant does meet them based upon what they have submitted to us. After the HR staff reviews that material, they transfer those who meet the minimum qualifications over to the hiring manager, who also gets to review and confirm that the minimum qualifications have been met. Together, the HR team and the hiring manager decide when the examination will be given. Depending on the job classification, it may be a written examination, it may be a performance evaluation, like if you have to use certain types of tools for the job, we may give you a performance exam to know that you know how to use those tools, or it may be written, or it may be an oral interview. So depending on the job defines what type of examination it will be. But regardless, once the hiring manager and HR decide on the type of exam, decide on the weight of the questions or the performance, the examination is scored by an outside panel. The outside panel is normally from a different jurisdiction, but sometimes, depending on the availability of people to score the exam, we have to have a mix of both outside and internal working together to give those scores. So the examination is scored, staff confirms the mathematics on the scores, puts the scores into that online application system, and if there is a tie in the way that we manage exams today, there have to be tie-breaking rules, because only one person can have a score. You cannot have two people with the same score. So if we have to apply tie-breaking rules, we do that, and then we put the scores in the system. I think there's a 3-day appeal period for the applicants to file an appeal if they believe something improper was done during the examination. Once the appeal window closes, then the list is established, and it is published for the applicants to know how they did. So that is the testing process, and that's where the list is published. So your question was, what steps does the applicant go through?
I think you're explaining it properly, just because I don't think most people understand the full process that applicants have to go through in government, like including the outside panel. And then when you receive that first score after the outside panel, is that the score we're talking about today?
That's the score. And the hiring manager has 3 people to consider from that exam. So the applicants get their score, and then the hiring manager within their department decides when they're going to invite those 3 top scores to their departmental interview, of which the hiring manager is likely a participant at the department level, and then the hiring manager from the departmental interview makes their selection from those top 3. Does that answer your question?
I have a question. So among
Wait.
those.
Sorry,
I'm
Alan,
sorry, I forgot.
Alan was
Oh, well,
Up
sure
first.
it's related to this.
Yes.
Why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. So if all 3 of them don't pass the departmental interview, what happens next?
If all 3 are not selected at the departmental interview, then the department cannot hire.
For how long? How long does that list stay valid?
The list is valid for 2 years, and unless the applicant asks to have their name removed, they stay in those 3 spots.
And one more question about that. If an applicant rejects the first position, but they want to apply for another position within basically the city, what happens?
A
Similar
different
position.
job within the city?
Let's say we have I'll bring an example as an engineer. I'm an engineer. So if a software engineer applies, but they don't want to work for that specific department, but they still want to stay on the pool. What happens? Can they reapply, or are they removed?
No, they're not removed.
Okay.
I think that they have up to 3 times to not select a job before their name is removed.
Okay, thank you so much.
But just to add to that example, they could still apply for a different job and be on another list as well.
True.
So they would remain on that list and another one.
Thank you.
Denise, I'll defer to Alan.
It is.
Great.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Alan. So can you just identify from start to finish the approximate timelines of your hiring process? From the moment the bulletin is posted to hiring, in terms of months?
Our internal goal is to have a cycle time to hire of 90 days. So that's a goal that we always try to reach. However, practically speaking, we can have a list established within 90 days. Once the list is established, at the departmental level, depending on scheduling, it may take a little bit longer for them to do their interviews. So, we average around 120 days from the time that the bulletin is announced to the person being in the chair. But we've had a long-standing goal in partnership with our hiring managers to get the cycle time to hire to be within 90 days, because that is really the industry standard.
I have a question on, it's on page, or it's slide 16, item 3 overview. Currently, eligibility lists are valid for 2 years, and then the parenthetical, mandatory for promotional list. So if we modify it, would the promotional list also be a shorter period of time or remain at 2 years? I'm not sure about the difference between promotional list and non-promotional list. I assume promotional list, opportunity for a higher position is posted.
Well, if you work for the city of Glendale and you take a promotional opportunity and you're on a list, that list will remain in effect for 2 years. But if you are someone who comes from the public and you compete in an open examination, not something that's for promotional opportunities only, that list, and correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, that list is also in place for 2 years. However, after 6 months, the department, along with HR staff, can make a request to the Civil Service Commission to cancel the list and start a new recruitment. And we would have to cite our reasons to the commission why we're asking to do the recruitment all over again. Sometimes it's that we've gone through the departmental interviews, and those who are interested have been selected and have a job. Sometimes we go through the interviews and we want to make a job offer to a particular candidate, but they've applied in multiple jurisdictions and they have accepted an opportunity elsewhere. And then we're, the remaining applicants didn't test as well, and we're wanting to refresh the list and keep it updated.
I'm sorry to be so dense, but how do promotional opportunities arise? I mean, how is that different than just an open position?
So for example, my colleague Russ Kwan is a senior HR analyst. If I had an opening for HR manager, I could advertise it as a promotional opportunity only. And only people who are at his level, currently working in HR, would be able to compete for that promotional opportunity.
So it can be an exclusive, limited exclusively to people already employees of the city.
Yes.
And would the proposal be to shorten promotional eligibility list as well? I mean, for instance, from 2 years to 6 months?
The proposal, well,
I mean,
we would like the flexibility to reduce the length of the list, depending upon the circumstances. For promotional candidates, it would not be, so this is Paula Adams speaking, it would not be my thought that it should be going down to 6 months for promotional candidates. I think a year is sufficient. But with opportunities open to the public, yes, because when things are open to the public, you're applying for multiple things because you're looking for employment. And so those names become stale so quickly. So.
thank you so much, because it really clarifies it for me, that there should be a distinction between promotional list in terms of what we decide.
Yes.
Then I guess, before I get to something else, following up on Alan's, what happened with open promotional? Or maybe just walk everybody through open promotional and open promotional, if that process still exists, just so everybody kind of understands where the city process is.
Certainly. So in addition to the promotional lists and open lists that Ms. Adams spoke of, we also have a combination promotional and open eligibility lists. Based on our civil service rules, the promotional lists take precedence over the open lists. So we would have to consider candidates that are on, who are on the promotional list before candidates who appear on the open list. So the promotional and open lists would continue to remain an option.
Anybody else have questions this time?
I'm hoping for a flow chart. I mean, I appreciate that Ani asked the question because this process is new to me. But all joking aside, if there is any sort of diagrammatic something available, I'm sure there's a narrative here in the charter that talks about it. But just to help at least someone like me to understand it, I'd appreciate it. I did have a couple questions, but I'll defer till everyone else is kind of gone.
I did want to respond to that specific question. What was described as far as the hiring process goes, those aren't spelled out in the charter itself. So while it's nice to have that background to understand how the hiring process works, those would not be rules that you would have an impact on amending. I think maybe it's important also to mention that there's a Civil Service Commission that plays a very prominent role in the process. I don't know if you want to hear about that, but that is in the charter as well.
And then there's an ordinance, and I assume that there's a very fat book of regulations, personnel policies. Rachel?
So I have questions about Rule of Three. So you said it's like too rigid for the city's needs, so I want to understand why it's so rigid. So if you go to page 3, so the example, there are 6 candidates. Let's say these are like engineers, they applied and based on the performance test, that's what they scored, right? So my first question is, you said they can appeal for the score, right? There's an appeal process, right?
There's an appeal process before the scores are released. So after you take the examination, if you believe that something improper happened during the testing process, there is a 3-day window to appeal.
So that appeal is like whether the exam something was wrong with the exam itself, or like whether something's wrong with the score that I got. What is the review about?
If a person files an appeal, it could be for a number of reasons. Maybe I went into a written exam and the person proctoring goes to my church And I view that as a conflict of interest. And I don't think that my church member should have been proctoring my exam. Or maybe I take a written exam, and of the choices of answers, I don't believe that I saw the right answer. And so I appeal question number 13 because all of the answers were wrong. It could be, whatever the applicant feels was not properly done during their examination. But during the appeal window, the applicant does not yet know their score.
Oh,
They just know what happened during the process.
Okay, so their appeal is not about the score that they got.
No, it's not about
Got
the
it,
score.
okay. So my next question is that, okay, so there are 6 people, so according to the rule of 3, the top 3 will be invited to the department interview, right? If they fail, can the department go below the next 3 or no?
No,
So they have to start over.
they cannot start over because the list is in place for 2 years.
So then,
They can't hire.
Can you run through that scenario again? I'm not sure I followed.
so like those top 3, 1, 2, 3, Lily, Antonio, Christina, they all failed the department interview, right? And because the list is in place, the department cannot hire people for while this list is valid? That's what you're telling me?
Based on the current rules, they must choose between the people illuminated in green. And at the departmental level, if the department doesn't believe that Lilia, Antonio, or Christina would be a good fit for them, then the department cannot do anything. They cannot go to Carlos the way our current rules are. It would take Lilia, Antonia, or Christina to voluntarily remove themselves from this list in order to reach the next person down, which is Carlos.
If they don't do that, then what happens?
They cannot hire. They cannot hire. They cannot fill their vacancy
And then
Until
this
list
list is-
expires.
until the list expires.
How long is the list valid?
2 years.
For the next 2 years, the department cannot hire anybody? Cannot even put up a new posting?
No.
No, the only thing that.
But it's important to note that
I share
it's,
your
that's,
incredulity.
that scenario is true for every alternative. So if you have the rule of 5, you have to pick one of the 5. If you have the rule of the band, you have to pick somebody from that list. So once a list gets certified, the hiring authority has to choose someone from that list, not go off the list and say, I just don't like these people. So they have to go through and select someone from the list that was established.
Is that a problem that happens?
Where hiring
The
managers,
scenario that she just outlined, is that
Yeah.
something that happens often?
it doesn't happen often, but it does happen.
Is it, I guess, is that a legitimate concern in terms of how you want to improve the system?
Yes, we want to give hiring managers more applicants to consider than fewer.
Let me just illustrate what happens, what can happen, I should say, in that particular situation where we are, for lack of a better term, stuck with the list. Department still has work to do. The department can't hire any of those on that list because they technically don't fit the specific need that they have. This is where things are going to start getting creative. We're going to now look at starting a whole new recruitment with a whole new title that's not the same title as what we were originally going for. That was the perfect title for that position. So we might be looking for a lower level position, a higher level position, reorganizing operations, and that in and of itself adds a whole level of unnecessary administrative complexity and time and resource drain, which is why we're sort of looking at alternatives to get away from it.
And does that process have to be discussed with the bargaining groups for every time you want to try to change a title or?
Any new title has to be discussed with the bargaining groups. We have to meet and confer. Creating a new title requires that we go before the Civil Service Commission. And if we're creating a new title and we need to set salary, the setting of the salary has to go to the City Council.
I had a question about the exam. So the exam is established in conjunction with the hiring manager and someone from HR.
Yes.
So in my mind, I'm probably falsely, incorrectly visualizing somebody pulling an exam off a shelf or something. So every time you hire for an opening, are you creating a new exam?
Yeah, we don't like to recycle because we may have candidates that come through on multiple occasions. So we like to sit down with the hiring manager each and every time. You know, questions may be similar because the job has not evolved much, but recycling questions and answers, we don't like to do that. We don't want people to, over time, memorize a bank of questions and be able to beat the system, if you will. We want it to be a competitive process based upon what's happening within the job role at that particular time.
Okay. And then if you had to pinpoint the biggest bottleneck in the onboarding, hiring, finding people, what is it? What's the, you know, the biggest bottleneck for example, is there a lack of applicants? Is there a lack of interest? Are the pools too shallow in terms of people who respond? What are some of the biggest challenges, and do these things address those biggest challenges?
Okay, so to answer your question, it really depends. So let's focus on information technology. In the information technology department, qualified applicants are very hard to find to work in the government setting. They gravitate more to the private sector, where they have more choices, salary schedules are more rich, and people with those skill sets gravitate to the private sector. So finding qualified applicants in IT is very challenging. And then we talked about the cycle time to hire. So if you're in the IT profession and our cycle time to hire is not as rapid and you're looking for a job, then you get on the list and it's stale before we've ever tried to use it. We have other jobs where the application, the number of applicants is plentiful. Those are normally entry level, maybe unskilled labor, maybe not requiring as much of education, more on-the-job training or apprentice-type roles, where we don't suffer in finding people who want to be in an apprenticeship program and learn on the job, if you will. So it really depends on the job, what some of the challenges are. But if we could together find a way to decrease the cycle time to hire and give hiring managers more choices, sometimes applicants are good test takers. But then in an oral interview, it's like you don't have the communication skills or the, I don't want to say personality type, but there's something missing that me as a hiring manager, I see you're not going to fit well with my team. But you're 100 on the written exam because you take a good test. So we want to give hiring managers more choices because we know that the people who scored well, they meet the minimum qualifications. They've proven that they have the knowledge base. But at the departmental level, then it becomes more about the balance between the knowledge and the fit for the team to be able to deliver to the citizens what they need.
Yeah, well, that's important. I'm glad you pointed that out. As someone who's hired people, a couple people, fit is a very big piece. And I know there's a lot of people who are just not good test takers, but they're great, fabulous employees and teammates. So I think that's, part of where I came from in reading this, and I have a couple other questions. This is a system that was set up nearly 100 years ago. You know, IT professionals didn't even exist in anyone's dreams, right? So one thought that I had was, and it's probably completely wrong, do you like set up two different systems? One for maybe more fast-paced IT, something like that, and one for another jobs that maybe don't require that type of decision making, and they're just set up differently. I don't know what the answer is. I'm so far from this. So I'm just asking questions to try to educate myself.
I mean, Carl? There's a thought,
Go ahead.
but I don't really know what the answer to that would be.
So in case my recollection is a little faulty, so the questions you were asking about what happens if the hiring manager doesn't like any of the top three. See if my recollection is right. The hiring interview, when you get to that stage of the civil service process, isn't part of the testing process. If you have passed the test and the name appears on the list for the hiring manager, then you are assumed to be qualified for that. So at that point, you are, under the rule of three, you are given, in essence, based on the testing process, 3 qualified names. You get to choose one of the 3. If you go, I don't like any of them, well, now you're stuck, because that means that the testing process, which is supposed to test the merit, has said these people are qualified.
So that's a question I had here. It says helps avoid hires where top candidates have weak work histories, and I was scratching my head saying, how can you be a top candidate and have a weak work history? They seem to cancel each other out.
They're different. They're measuring different things.
Top candidate means that you're qualified for the job. You've taken the exam. But a weak work history in the mind of a hiring manager can look differently. Some hiring managers aren't as keen towards applicants who change jobs every 4 months. We don't check references until you're at a point where you're getting an offer. So we don't even know what your references look like at that point. We just know that you've passed that exam.
Oh, so that's what the weak work history refers to. Thank you.
Carl?
I'll have a couple questions along the way.
I do too, but
Well, and I'll come back after that.
No.
Because the weak work history also, something I was thinking about. Is there a way to incorporate that into the exam so the weak work history doesn't hit the hiring manager's desk? As I said, I'm sort of weighing off. I mean, we're working on a merit-based system to a certain extent, trying to avoid what I think has traditionally been called a good old boy network of people picking their friends, but picking based on merit and who they need. So I think as to Paul's comment, is there a way to incorporate that into the history? And then, at least from your perspective, do you think the hiring rules should be different promotionally versus an open list in terms of like rule of 3, rule of 5, rule of the list? And I guess I might as well ask it, when you get to something like banding, how do you statistically calculate that? Is that you go everybody who's above 90, or are you using a statistical formula that it's like the first standard deviation?
Is it a
in the
percent,
first
like
band,
top percentile?
in the top band? Because I think, I have a suspicion that somewhere in here, people who work within the organization and the associations that represent them may have some thoughts on how this works out and how the system perceives out in terms of fairness and equity. And having sat in a prior life on both sides of that, I'm kind of looking, going, okay, how do we make this fit?
So with banding, the hiring manager and HR would determine before the examination is given what the banding would look like. It wouldn't be determined after the test is given. So, for example, if we have 12 vacancies for something, we might want to consider banding 90 to 100, 80 to 89, 70 to 79 to fill 12 vacancies. And we may only get through the first band because there may be enough applicants in band number 1, 90 to 100, to fill those 12 vacancies. For a different examination, it may look different based upon the number of positions we want to fill. So I think, collaborating with the hiring manager and HR based upon the exam, we would make that decision up front, not after the fact. Banding with civilian jobs seems to work better than in public safety. But
Why?
because in public safety, they're testing for so many different things to see if you're a good fit to be a public safety officer. And you may do well in one key area and not as well as in another. And in my experience dealing with public safety, they're pretty satisfied, if you will, with the system that they have in place, and change may be harder to achieve within those groups. But then on the civilian side, where we may have 6 custodians to fill, it probably would work out better for the Public Works Department. And I'm sorry, what was the first part of your question?
Oh, no,
Sorry,
I
hijacked you.
Keep going, I'll come back to it.
Well, I have a list, so I was gonna,
I'll have more when you're done, so keep going.
okay. Rachel?
So I have 2 questions. So can you tell me what neighboring city has, what system that they have? And as an HR manager, what is your preference? Do you want to get rid of the rule of 3? Like, I mean, even if we adopt like banding rule of 5, we still have the same problem. If those top tier doesn't meet, you cannot hire. So as a like practical matter, what system do you think works best for the city?
I'll let Mr. Kwan talk about what our neighboring cities do, and then I'll take the second part of your question.
Okay, so to answer your question with regards to what our neighboring jurisdictions do, I'll start with Los Angeles County. They primarily do banding. So that's where we have the 90 to 100 band, 80 to 89 band. The city of Burbank, they have a couple rules in place. The first one would be if it's a general civil service position, they have they run off of the rule of 3. But if it's one that's represented by the Burbank City Employees Association, they have the rule of 3 whole scores, and these were also demonstrated in the slides that we presented. City of Pasadena has a variety of rules that you can utilize, ranging from banding to a modified version of the rule of 3. So they would get the top 3 scoring individuals plus the individuals that scored within 3 percentage points of that third candidate. And then lastly, the city of Los Angeles also uses the rule of 3 whole scores as well as banding.
So when you hear Mr. Kwan identify what LA County, LA City, and Pasadena is doing, those jurisdictions are providing more applicants for consideration. Banding, rule of 3 whole scores, it gives more applicants for consideration. And so if you're asking me from my professional experience what my preference would be, it would be to give hiring managers the same, more choices. 3 whole scores would be my preference.
Rachel, you said you had 2 questions?
Yeah, that both of them.
That's both of them.
I got my other one back.
You got your other one back?
Just,
I think
oh, please.
If I might add one other aspect to illustrate the somewhat rigidity of the rule of 3. In the example in the slide, we had Lila with a score of 95, Antonio with a score of 93, and Christina 91. If Carlos's score, as illustrated in the example, is 90, just 1 point below Christina. If Carlos's score was also a 91, based on the existing rules, we would have to use our tie-breaking procedures and identify which one of those 2, Christina or Carlos, who both scored 91, would end up in the rule of 3. So based on the current rule of 3, we have to break ties.
Before you get to any of the other criteria.
Exactly.
Alan?
Given the examples of some of the other cities in LA County, if, for instance, does the hiring manager or the department get to choose, like if they have a modified rule of 3 or banding? I mean, are these options that every department, every manager has to choose whether they want banding or some other, whatever other systems available?
From the information I've gathered, the rules lay out what structures the hiring managers already have. So with the city of Burbank, it's pretty straightforward. If it's a civil service represented position, it's strictly the Rule of 3. With a position that's represented by that particular association, they get the Rule of 3 whole scores. And with Los Angeles County, it seems like they're pretty much restricted to banding.
That's like a whole different scale, though, LA County.
Yeah.
So we would potentially need to consider different methodologies for different categories of Glendale employees? I mean, that should be something we would consider.
We can also consider removing the rule from the charter and giving that authority to the Civil Service Commission. So depending upon what type of exam and what bargaining group we're dealing with, we have more flexibility to pivot to, public safety or whatever bargaining group we're dealing with.
And I would just add, I think with the Burbank example, their charter, actual charter language is very, very lean. It's one sentence. It just says the city shall have a civil service system adopted by ordinance of the city. That's not what we're suggesting here, but to Ms. Adams' point, the city can ultimately modify this to provide that whatever the process is will be governed by the civil service rules and take out the specific requirement for the Rule 3 from the charter.
Is it accurate then? I mean, we could remove the impediment and let the problem be solved by others who have more direct experience.
That's correct.
Can you explain what a bargaining unit is?
So we have groups of employees who are represented by an association for them. In larger jurisdictions, the term that is commonly used is union. In our workforce, they're associations, with the exception of Glendale Water and Power, that has positions that are covered by the IBEW, which is a union. So that's what we're talking about when we say bargaining groups.
No?
I forgot.
Okay. Denise, been waiting for you.
Two questions, Ms. Adams. Back to the Rule of 3. Can you first off say how many times approximately you weren't able to pick from those top 3? And then secondly, I'll give you my second question if you find that helpful. On the Rule of 5, how many times, based on answering the first question and based on hearing you say that you need more candidates, does the Rule of 5 give you that or not? And I'm asking an experiential question, I recognize, but I'd like to hear from your experience, if the Rule of 5 would give you that.
So the Rule of 5 would definitely give 2 additional choices from which to consider. I joined the city of Glendale in 2022, so in my 3 years, I've seen hiring managers not select 10 times probably.
And I would just add, there's also times that they have selected reluctantly. Under normal circumstances, that wasn't the best group of candidates that they would have wanted to choose from with the Rule of 3.
Or perhaps maybe there was one very solid candidate, but the other 2 maybe not so much. So the intent of having 3 candidates in the top 3 and really not really serving the purpose.
Linda?
So I have one question about banding. I did a lot of research on this last night, so that's why I was asking some questions earlier, because I think it's relevant for everyone to kind of hear them. But with the banding, the problem I have with it is that if the bands are pre-decided, what if we don't get someone in a certain band? Then what happens? For example, the first one is between, let's say, 90 to 100, and we don't have anyone who scores that much. Do we go to the next band, or do we have to decide that?
No, if up front we decide that the 3 bands will be 70 to 79, 80 to 89, 90 to 100, for example, and none of the applicants score between 90 and 100, but they score in band 2 or band 3, and so that's how the list would be published?
We moved to.
And we would go down, yes.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so also I have one question. You mentioned that your preference would be 3 whole scores. I just wanted to know, what was the reasoning behind it? Was it because there was no tie breaking in that scenario? It does give us more options, but there's a chance that it doesn't. We can't be sure.
Right. While we can't be sure, the way our tie-breaking rules are structured, it comes down to when did you apply for the job? So I waited until the last day to apply, but I applied and I meet the deadline. But somebody who applied on day 1, they get that score because I applied on the last day.
Okay, that makes
That
sense.
just doesn't seem right to me. So 3 whole scores where we can have, I mean, we don't have to have these tie-breaking rules that in today's modern society just don't make, people are busy and they sometimes wait till the last day to do something. But then the applicant from the public doesn't know that it could come down to the date of the application. How would they know that? You know what I mean? So
Right.
it just doesn't seem fair and it doesn't seem relevant. And so why have tie-breaking rules? We should be able to have the same score.
Right.
Can I chime in on that one, just because on the tie-breaking being based on the date of the application, is that in the charter or the civil service rules?
That's in the civil
It's in the
service
civil
rules.
service rules.
One more last question. So we also discussed to basically just came up to remove the rule of 3. From my perspective, just to share it, I want to see if this could be an issue, which is favoritism, basically. That's the first one, and weakened merit system, basically, which is a concern. So, and also some transparency concerns, because if there is no rule, then the hiring manager can pick anyone who is on the list. That would be the case. Am I correct about it?
Well, we were suggesting to remove the rule of 3 from the charter.
Oh, I see.
Not
Okay.
necessarily remove it altogether and delegate that authority to the Civil Service Commission, whose job is to
oversee,
confirm that we in HR are being fair and equitable in our examination processes, we're being transparent, and we're not moving towards favoritisms and other isms in order to, hire who we want.
Right, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the explanation.
You've been so patient.
Thank you. Ms. Adams, maybe you can speak to the fact that, you're recommending there's a rule of 3, rule of 5, and then not even maybe removing it altogether from the charter. But have you looked into rule of many? Like, is that something that the city has considered before, or can you speak to that at all, or no? Like a general rule of many?
The rule of many is not something that I'm personally familiar with.
Okay.
And as we prepared for this subject in our research, it did not come up.
It's what I was actually researching this, I looked into the fact that you'll just be open to all the candidates that are, qualified. And you have a pool of, right? Is that correct?
So there's just
So
a
I think
minimum
that's
score.
called the rule of the list.
Right. I mean,
It could be considered, but professionally, that would not be my recommendation for the same reasons that Linda brought up. Yes, you're qualified, you're on the list, but then I would be concerned about, family and friends, favoritism, rather than some sort of system where I do have to skew towards the top people who performed, and with some flexibility to consider fit, so I wouldn't want to just be limited to 3 people. I just don't think that that's enough of a choice. But if it was the rule of the entire list, and 70 is passing, and 100 is the best, I don't know that I would want to give that choice to the hiring manager. Professionally, that just would not feel right for me to make that recommendation.
Well, I would suspect that you would have some qualifications, from choosing the top, like merit-based together with, it's just that it increases the pool, doesn't it? Of
It
how you
increases the
approach it.
pool. Oh, I'm sorry, didn't mean to
Yeah,
interrupt.
sorry about
Once the list is established, everybody is considered qualified, and then it goes to the hiring manager. HR is not involved in that process. The hiring manager then is, and our hiring managers are trained, and we expect them to be fair. I believe it would open up more questions, if you will. That's just how I view that.
Thank
Ms. Adams, apologies if I missed it. Did you answer my question about the Rule of 5 and your thoughts on it?
The Rule of 5 gives 2 additional candidates for certain. I don't know if 5 is enough. It's more than 3, so it's better than what we have today. But that would not be my number one choice. Was that the question that you're asking me?
Yes, specifically, I had heard at least 3 times where you talked about we need more candidates, and I wondered if something as definitive as the Rule of 5 achieved that. But what I've heard from your comments is that the Rule of 3 whole scores is higher in your mind than the Rule of 5. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
If we remove the impediment of the Rule of 3 from the charter, I'm just thinking, and then defer to the Civil Service Commission to determine whatever method was appropriate. So 2-part question. First, would you recommend that it be consistent across positions and across the city, meaning if we're going to use bands, use bands. If you're going to use 5, use 5. If you're going to use the whatever method, is it consistent? Or would it just be the Civil Service Commission's discretion to determine how it's done?
I don't think that it should be consistent because we have hundreds of job classifications and different hiring managers in different departments may have different needs. And so I think public safety is unique, and there may be a system that works very well for public safety. There may be a system that works very well for entry level or unskilled labor that may not be as applicable to complex leadership. And so because the Civil Service Commission, we have to take job specifications to them that identify the minimum qualifications to even apply. They hear discussion around these different job titles on a regular and routine basis, and I think that they would be very well equipped to weigh in on the thoughts at that level. And before we even bring an item to the Civil Service Commission for consideration, we're always required to meet and confer with the unions anyway, or the bargaining groups, I should say, anyway, so we already know what the bargaining groups believe for the particular job in mind before we even get to the commission level.
Okay, so that's good. One follow-up question, unrelated to the banding or to that. In terms of yeah, should I pause?
No, I still have questions. I'm just waiting.
Okay, thanks. In terms of the probationary period of 6 or 12 months, that was the other area that we discussed or that was presented. I certainly have a predisposition for one over the other. Could you maybe walk us through, just from a practical standpoint, would you see that be consistently applied? And two, would you allow, do you prefer one over the other for any particular reason?
So having a 6-month probationary period for non-managerial positions and a 1-year probationary period for managerial positions, I would not like to see that change. However, the way the civil service rules are written right now is that you cannot go beyond 12 months. In a leadership role, and sometimes people promote more rapidly than maybe in years gone by, in order for me to be comfortable with the person passing probation, I might believe they need about another 3 to 6 months to really prove their readiness. And right now, I have to make that decision at 1 year. And so my decision is gamble and pass the person on probation or terminate their employment. I don't have the flexibility to give them more time to grow within the role and for me to continue to examine their readiness. And so when we say change the length of probation, we're saying, depending upon the situation, allow us more flexibility. The rules are written where I can, if you have a 6-month probation and the hiring manager seeks HR's approval to extend it to 1 year, the rules are written that I can extend from 6 months to 1 year. But once that 1 year hits, I have to make a decision. And sometimes we've invested so much in the employee, and people have different learning curves. Maybe they just need a little bit more time, and I believe they should get there. We like to give hiring managers the flexibility to extend if they need it. And that's what we're seeking with that proposal.
Okay, and would that just be the hiring manager going to HR? How would you envision it, that being the process? They go, they make their case, look, I'd like to give this person another 6 months, and then the HR would agree? Is that how it generally would work?
That's the way I would like to see it work, yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have one follow-up. Okay, sorry.
Kind of want to just follow up the post question. So let's say we remove everything, and then let you go to the Civil Service Commission, and then depending on the role, like public safety, civil service, or like very basic entry level, like would that allow you to pick different method, rule of 3, rule of 5, or bending, whatever it needs? Would that that system would allow you to have that flexibility that you want, or no? That's too much, or that's not what you need.
I'm going to have to ask the city attorney. I believe that would give us that flexibility.
I apologize, I missed the question.
So if we remove all the restriction from the charter, would that allow HR to pick whatever method that they fit to specific type of job, public safety, civil service, whatever, and then go to the Civil Service Commission and then ask for permission? Can we use this rule for this specific type of job?
Correct. I mean, as long as the civil service approves the rule and the application of it, and then those rules also have to get council approval, they get both entities' approval, then yeah, then that would provide the flexibility if these restrictions that are in the charter are removed.
Thank you.
Sorry, about the probation period, I have a question. Would it be more feasible to have basically variable probation by position time? As you mentioned, you explained about the roles. So I'm just trying to understand what you were suggesting. Would it be better to group certain positions, the entry levels, 6 months, let's say mid-level administrative, whatever the role is, for 1 year, and then the leadership, safety, fire safety, I don't know. I'm not aware of the roles completely, but were you suggesting to have variable probation timelines or have a flexible that HR could decide what it is? So I'm trying to distinguish if there are...
So probationary periods are 6 months.
Correct.
The Civil Service Commission, by resolution, has already identified what job classifications are a year. So we already have that in place. What we're asking is to have additional flexibility to extend beyond 12 months, depending upon the situation that arises. I could get injured at work or come down with an illness. Laws around ADA have changed, and I could bring that up as a situation where I may need additional time to learn my job, for example. But the way that the rules are structured, as an employer, I can't even consider that.
I understand.
12 months has come, and I have, a learning disability, and the job that I'm working in can't accommodate my additional learning, but the rules say 12 months is 12 months. So we're just seeking more flexibility around, ADA is one example, but being in a complex leadership role and some of the projects that we have going on within our city, I can take an exam around leadership and score well, but until I am leading, I don't realize how challenging that job really can be in leading others, in doing performance evaluations and things like that.
Of course.
And so the executive may say, Paula's doing well, but I believe she just needs a little bit more time to really 100% meet my expectations. And in that situation, I think that the city should have flexibility to extend.
Right. One more additional question which is relevant to this. So I'm trying to understand why probation timeline matters this much for in a government job, because I work for public sector, and if you're not doing your job, they can terminate you. So is that a limitation that the government jobs have? And that's why we want to have this flexibility?
Yeah, you are an at-will employee until you pass probation.
Okay.
Once you pass probation, you're no longer at will in the civil service system. So that's why the probationary period means something different within this environment.
So just to add to that, so what happens as soon as you pass probation, you essentially have a property interest right in that position, which means that if the department or the city was going to move to terminate your employment,
Or discipline, any
or
significant level
discipline,
of discipline. Yeah, exactly.
absolutely, you have to go through an entire process. So that's why Paula earlier was saying, as you're getting close to that probationary limit, it might be an employee who just needs a little more time, a little more training, a little more evaluation. You want to make sure to give them every opportunity to succeed. But you're faced with the situation of, if I give them that opportunity beyond this maximum of 12 months or 6 months, then if they don't cut it, now we're going to go through this long drawn out process. There's attorneys involved. There's all kinds of civil service rules. Some people just pull the plug. And I think there's opportunity here to redeem and really utilize the system properly to essentially allow people to be good at what they do and be able to develop a livelihood. Gives us an option to give them an option or an additional try.
Questions about the Civil Service Commission. Are there term limits to the commission, and what are the qualifications to be on the commission? And also, there might be a chance that the commission seats are not filled, correct?
Well, there are term limits. I believe it's 2 years?
Three 4-year terms.
3 4-year terms, okay, so there are term limits. They stagger in terms of, the tenure. Like I said, I've been with the city for 3 years now, the city of Glendale. I haven't had the experience where we didn't, at minimum, have a quorum on our Civil Service Commission. When there is an opening, those who are interested complete an application, and then they go through a selection process, if you will, by 2 city council members.
Correct.
They review their readiness, their suitability to be on the commission, and the decision is made at the city council level if they get the appointment or not.
And the only thing I would add is that under the charter, the civil service commissioners serve 4 years or until their successor is appointed, whereas all the other boards and commissions, they basically can get removed when there's a new council member or new council terms start. The commissioners on civil service serve 4 years, and then once their 4-year term is up, if the council hasn't appointed their replacement, they continue to serve exactly until they're either they're reappointed or their successor is appointed.
What are the qualifications?
Resident elector of Glendora.
So they don't need to know anything about HR or like nothing?
It's not a requirement, but it is a desired qualification.
The
And we ha-
commissioners that, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sure.
The commissioners that I've worked with are working in employment, either in the public sector or the private sector, or they're licensed attorneys. We do some foundational acclimation to the commission so that they understand their role. But the commissioners that I've been engaged with understand employment. And I have not found that to be a challenge here.
Bowman? Okay. The nice thing was I waited long enough, and I've been able to cross off most of my questions because they've been answered in the course of the discussion. So these are going to be kind of disjointed, but make sure I understand a couple key things. I don't understand the difference between the scores from the testing system used for the rule of 3 and the whole score concept. Can we just walk through what goes into a whole score that makes it different than the score?
With whole score, it could be 96.2, 96.3, 96.4. We all get the same score of 96 at the end of the day. So there could be several people with the same score of 96, and we don't have to round up or round down. So within one score, it could be.
It's just a rounding error.
Right.
But you're getting more candidates out of it because
We
you're not-
can
you're
have
not-
the
you're not-
same score.
You're not having tiebreakers.
We don't have tiebreakers with the 3 whole scores. There are no tiebreakers.
Okay.
So if you stayed with the rule of 3, as an example, and
You
you
have
had
to
3
force it.
96s, a 94, and a 92, I assume you'll have 5 people to choose, 5 people on the list?
If you did rule of 3 whole score.
If you do
Rule of three
rule
whole
of 3
score.
whole score, yes. If we look at the slide that addressed the rule of 3 whole score, slide number 11, under our current rules, if in fact these were the scores of candidates who went through a testing process and ultimately the eligible list was established under our current rules, the rule of 3, the hiring department would be able to interview and consider Lila, Antonio, and Christina. And looking at their scores, Lila is a 96.9, Antonio is a 96.2. So there isn't much of a variation in their score. And moving down to Christina, 94.9, these would be the only 3 individuals who would advance to a final hiring interview. So that would be the difference, using this example, under the rule of 3, which is what we currently have, versus the rule of 3 whole scores.
Okay. My only other remaining question was, has the Civil Service Commission expressed any opinions on any of these questions as a commission?
Have they expressed what now?
Have they expressed any opinions on these 3 questions?
No, what we told the Civil Service Commission is that we would, first, we told the Civil Service Commission that these meetings are occurring and that they can either show up or tune in, so they are aware of the discussion. And we said, based upon what this committee decides, that we would take a report back to the commission so that they do have an opportunity to weigh in.
Okay.
But this is the second meeting that we're talking about it, And so they haven't had anything to weigh in on
Yeah.
quite yet.
I'm going to let it sit there since you've outlined that there is a process that they're going to be able to talk about these questions specifically and perhaps make a recommendation,
Yes,
separate and apart from what we're doing here.
yes.
Okay. All right. I like that. All right. Are there any more questions? Or we can hear from the audience and then have a discussion amongst ourselves?
Actually, I think two quick ones.
I'll allow it.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
You're welcome. On the rule of three kind of being an impediment, is that more, do you see it as more of an impediment on open exams versus promotionals? Or is the problem, or do you see it as an issue or problem in both?
I would say it's more of an issue with promotional opportunities, but it has come up in both open and promotional.
So the rule of three is overly restricting hiring managers in promotional, in selecting an appropriate person for promotion, more so than on an open list for a new hire into the city? Am I interpreting that correctly?
I would say yes, yes.
All right. And I think just to follow up on the banding question, so if nobody fell into band one, then the hiring manager would then get band two. That's where the hiring process would start. And absent a change in the rule, if they didn't like anybody in band two, they've passed. So you got to find somebody in that group that you like.
As long as they're,
Or you can't hire.
as long as in band two, there are at least 3 people.
Okay.
If in band two, there were only 2, you would get band 2 and 3.
And then I think on probationary periods, the only question I had is something along the lines of a maximum of 18 months, whether it's stated in the exam. I have a vague recollection of, I'm sorry, for the probationary period being a max of 18 months, I have a vague recollection of a couple decades ago of somebody considering maybe wanting to have an 18-month probationary period for a particular position because of the level of work that was occurring or the level of experience the person was getting. They wouldn't experience it in the 12-month period, and so they were looking at 18. So if it was a maximum of 18, whether it was set in advance as the probationary period for this is 18 months, or you could extend it 6 months with flexibility that if somebody is having challenging, but you think they're capable of maybe pulling it out if you give them a little extra time, would that work?
Yes, that would, I think that would resolve the issues that we're seeing today.
So if you have a complex leadership position, the person could say probation period 18 months, but that would be the cap, kind of like 12 months is now the cap in the charter now. But if it was less than 18 months, then you would have the flexibility to extend probation by a maximum of 6 months for a particular position if it was warranted by the specific circumstance.
I think the discussion item, as we presented it, is not saying extend probation to 18 months across the board.
No, and I'm not suggesting that either. I'm just
extending
throwing out there going, hey,
extending the
if a hiring manager, or when you go through the process of creating the position and putting it out there, if someone says, hey, this is really complex and we would like an 18-month probation period, that would be the max, and you could state that up front
Yes,
so that everybody knows the rule. If it is less than 18 months, so if it's 6 or 12, then it could be extended by 6 months at the discretion of the director of HR.
yes.
Following it. So as I read the charter now, the charter merely imposes a maximum, but the civil service rules work out 6 months or
Oh, thank you. You said phone, and the phone was ringing. I got confused.
So the charter just, all it does is impose a maximum. And so is the suggestion to remove the maximum, any maximum, so that you could decide through the Civil Service Commission process, however, how to assign it? Or is it to extend the maximum to a set period to something like 18 months?
We like to have the flexibility to extend the maximum to up to 18 months.
Okay, so it's just really, it's changing the number 2 to the number 8.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have any speakers?
Chair, there are 3 speakers in the room and 0 callers.
Okay. Let's have the first speaker, please.
Beth Brooks.
That was a great presentation, and it was just, everything was just great. The whole conversation, the whole discussion was great. It was a great presentation. Of course, I think you should, if it's so hard to terminate somebody, who's a civil service employee, unlike the rest of us, who are at-will employees, extend the probation, just keep going, and put a 2 as the first numeral, and I think that's great. Because I don't know, I mean, all I, know as a layman is that it's like impossible to fire civil service. That it's just, they'll sue you, and it goes on, and it's crazy, and so that's really not good when the public is like, we could be fired in a second. So it should be much easier to terminate somebody who's a civil servant if it's so easy for an at-will. I don't know, that's not a charter issue, I suppose, it's a Civil Service Commission issue, I guess. I'm not sure about that either, which to me means I don't know why they have a 4-year term. I don't know what other commissions are given terms in the charter. If every commission gets a term in the charter, they do. So it's outlined for each commission that they get a term. Okay, so that's something you can't do anything about, or you could just not give a term. You know what I mean? For a commission, you could just say they're chosen and don't have any terms. How often is it that people are terminated after their probation? Is that like a thing that happens often? Is it an anomaly? That whole list process to me is bizarre. I mean, that you would have this list that you keep people on. It's almost like having a list of dead people. I mean, like you have a list and what, they're going to just all of a sudden say, you know what, I want the job now? I don't really understand that whole process because then you can't hire for 2 years. Well, you should throw that out. I mean, I don't know if that's something you have to have, but you should, that's it. If the hiring manager doesn't choose one of those either 3 or 5 or whatever people that you have as, the top candidates, why is there even a list? Why would you lock in people not being able to hire anybody? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't exist in the private sector. That's some kind of strange thing. I don't know why you just don't have a score that you just take everybody who's above 90% as a whole number. I don't know, are you not allowed to do that? Are you not allowed to make a rule like that? Do you see a lot of nepotism? I'm told that there's like family members and, maybe somebody knows what's on a civil service test and they've let somebody else know. Is that happening in the city of Glendale? That would be something interesting to know, because I mean, I think the 90% you wouldn't have to lower standards. You wouldn't have to go into another band, because to go below 90 just doesn't make sense. I mean, these people are just not qualified. And also that you don't get references. You only have a test score, whereas people could know what's on a civil service test. Maybe they've applied at other, municipalities. That you don't do more than one thing, that it's not just, that the test is not the first thing you get through. That's also strange to me, that the test is the first thing you have to, the first hurdle you have. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ruby.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. One, I think Ms. Brooke just mentioned. The first one is, if it's you mentioned, Ms. Adams, about a promotional position. How about opening to the public? You can hire someone from a different city or from a private sector. Why it has to be something promotion that has to be within? We need the best qualified person, regardless if it's within or outside the city of Glendale. That's number one. In my opinion, we should take always the best candidate, regardless if it's within or not within. The second is about nepotism. I'm just curious if you know if in city of Glendale, you've been here 3 years, if you're aware if there's any nepotism in Glendale. And if there is, and you find out there is, what would you do about it? That's my question.
Thank you.
Herbert Milano.
Members of the Commission, my name is Herbert Milano. I think that for you to make decisions with regard to the structure of the Civil Service Commission, you need a significant amount of experience, especially in the area of hiring and firing, And if you don't, I would suggest that you get some data and information and postpone any decision until you get that. I tried to prepare information for you. At the end of August, I submitted a California Public Records Act with all series of questions with regard to how often is the hiring done by department, how often are they fired, the type of issues that goes to the Civil Service Commission, the statistics necessary to figure out what is the level of involvement. At 15 days, I made a second request for it. I have been blown off. No answer. The city attorney's office has not provided any information. And to this day, I don't have that information that would have been essential and critical for you to make decisions on. I'll tell you the reason why. On prior requests for information about the extent of nepotism, I believe it is significant. If I recall correctly, there was a 6-month period of time where there were about 40 individuals who were hired who already had employees or relatives working for the city of Glendale. If I were to extrapolate that, we would probably have hundreds of employees. And it is the one indicator, the most damning indicator with regard to the quality of the situation that you have within hiring. Because it affects everything once inside. Somebody doesn't get promoted, and the person who's promoted, they know is a relative of somebody. The positions that get open, they go to individuals who basically know the system. Questions such as how many lawsuits have been handled by the city attorney's office with regard to personnel. Personnel suing the city for whatever reason. Don't have time to give you some anecdotes of 2 very serious lawsuits of which I am aware of. The problem of having more than 50% of the score be oral, which means it's subjective. If there's a score for any particular technical position where there's a 25% written score and maybe another 35% of the score happens to be oral, and whatever the remainder is depending upon some other type of follow-up interview, that to me would be an incredibly problematic situation where it is now dependent on who is the interviewing. And if there's nepotism involved or suspected, that creates a significant problem for the whole situation of hiring in the city, within the city. How many days is the advertising open for open positions? If we find that they are less than 30 days, and then there's a claim that you cannot find anybody, that has to be looked at. I suggest that you postpone any major decision with regard to civil service until you get that data that I requested, and I submit it for it to be given to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
No.
All right. I did it again. So, with that in mind, the first question was the Rule of 3 itself. Does anybody have any thoughts on the proposed options for amending the Rule of 3 in the charter?
My general thought is I personally need some more time. I mean, we've had these materials for 2 hours now.
We got them a couple days ago.
What's that? Your mic's not on
I said
again.
we got them. No, it is.
Oh, okay, this time. So I would probably need some more time, obviously, with the goal of increasing optionality for the hiring managers, I think is the goal. So which one is the preferred method, I don't know, but I generally agree with the need to give more options, and particularly ones that focus on merit.
Yeah. I mean, my inclination, I too am coming to this new, my inclination is that the putting the 3 in the charter and having that dictated from the get-go is a problem. Some systems should be used, and using different systems for different situations would make sense to me, and we have a whole Civil Service Commission to weigh in on those decisions. I would trust to. I just don't know how to whether to replace it or just with something else, or whether or not just needs to be taken out.
My first question was, as whenever I approach something like this, is why is it this way to begin with, right? Somebody didn't just pick it just because they saw number 3. There was probably some, and I know we're not prepared to answer that question. It's not apparent to me why it was 3 versus 5 versus 10. The other follow-up question is: was this decision for 3 set at a time when associations didn't exist, when confer wasn't a thing? I don't know, right? There's some background questions that I have, but generally, there needs to be enough optionality available to the hiring manager to find the best candidate. So I hear that's being restricted by the 3, but I'm just not prepared to decide what's the best way to remove that or improve that, I should say.
So I believe I read somewhere that it was the federal system that they had a rule of 3 and it was replicated. From my notes I'm finding here. As far as the flexibility, I do think there should be flexibility, but I don't have a suggestion or any kind of idea of what it should be. I agree with Paul. I've done my studies last night, but the presentation we had on the September 4th was different than today, so I received some more new information. I would like to study it. I do think having 3 candidates and them not, let's say, accepting or not passing the oral interviews, and waiting for the hiring managers waiting for 2 years to recruit someone else or have the testing process again is extremely inefficient. So with that, I do think that there should be a change to the charter. At the same time, I also think there should be fairness and transparency, so there should be a change that is balanced, and it's either way if we go with the Civil Service Commission.
I'm kind of comfortable with the transparency if it goes to the Civil Service Commission, because
either way.
that's a Brown Act body. Those meetings have to be public, so the decisions are transparent, and they're made on a more refined, smaller scale basis by
And
people who have expertise.
And there is flexibility, of course, there, yeah.
But is there anything, Ms. Adams, that you
not a
see?
Brown Act body? No, I wanted to make a point, but
Yeah,
after
please.
Mr. Kerber.
I defer to
No,
you.
I just, if we do go back and study this further, if you look at the charter language on this, what it says is the Civil Service Commission shall establish rules governing the civil service, and the rules shall have these things. And so the Rule of 3
This is one of the things it has to be.
Has to be. So if the commission, if the charter amendment, if a charter amendment is put forward to the voters, that could be one amendment to just not have a very specific prescription on what the process needs to be.
Okay. We haven't really talked about the length of the eligibility list. I don't remember there being extended questioning on that.
One question I had on that was
2 years is a long time.
Well, it is a long time, and if you call someone and they've already taken employment elsewhere, and they have to formally ask to be removed, and is that formal process too prescriptive? I mean, it would make sense to me that if you went down the list and you called somebody and they said, "Thanks, I'm not interested," boom, okay, you're off the list, and then I can just keep going. But is there something we're missing?
No, we generally get cooperation from applicants who are on the list who have found other opportunities. There's a form that they must complete, and they submit it to our office to be removed from the list. I haven't found that people are uncooperative in that area, but it does take an action on the applicant's part.
Is it one of those things where they have to sign it, mail it in? Is that a friction point that keeps people needlessly on the list?
It can't just be an email saying, "I don't want the job," and you put it in the file?
We do accept emails, and we do accept
Oh, okay.
emails indicating that they are not interested. That being said, there are occasions where candidates who have made it on the list, even if they have accepted other employment since being placed on the eligibility list for Glendale, don't want to remove their name because who knows what might happen in the future.
Everybody likes
They might
options.
still be on probation in the new role, and they would like to remain on the list and not remove their name from the eligibility list in Glendale, just in case. So we do run into some of those issues as well.
All right, at some point, infinite options costs the system. So what are the recommendations in terms of that?
Yeah, I mean, would you recommend having the discretion to go to a shorter period on the list? Because right now, the minimum is 1 year, the maximum is 2 years. Would you like the ability, the flexibility in some cases to go 6 months?
Yes.
What number would you like? I will write it down.
Sorry, I didn't finish my thought. There was one more.
I would like to add one point of clarification. In the police department, they have promotional lists with a 1-year eligibility duration. But before we give the examination in those instances, they go before the Civil Service Commission and make the length of the list known, and the commission has the flexibility in these scenarios to say, okay, we know before the bulletin is promulgated to the public that the police department's request is to have this list in place for 1 year. And those specific cases have been approved.
Could you walk us through, Ruby made a comment about promotional opportunities versus open. So if I understand, promotional opportunities are limited to within the city. So theoretically, the pool is limited and versus an open one. Why one versus another? How's that distinction made? And does that prevent getting the best candidate, whether they're in or outside of the city?
Well, before you promulgate a job bulletin, the hiring manager and HR do dialogue. There are some scenarios where the hiring manager wants to advertise both on an open and on a promotional basis to get a mix from within the city and outside of the city. And so we do run open and promotional exams. But once the list is established, the people from the public are on one list, the promotional candidates are on a separate list. And the rules state that you must consider the promotional candidates first before exploring what's on the open list. So that's the structure that we are working within.
Is there a case where you would only want, can you walk me through a case that would make sense? You would only want a promotional listing advertised, so you would not offer an open one?
Fire captain, fire engineer, police sergeant, police lieutenant.
Mm-hmm. And those are, right now you have the flexibility to do that. There's no issues.
Flexibility to do
You have
what
the
exactly?
flexibility to do that. It's the hiring manager's discretion to make that decision.
Those are promotional only exams. I thought that was the question you were asking.
No, but you have a position. You have a position, and then that position, theoretically, you could go open fire chief, you could go promotional fire chief, right? If I'm understanding. And again, I've never dealt with this, so I'm trying to figure this out. So you have a open fire chief position, and you need to advertise it. You have two paths, as I understand it. The first one being promotional candidate, so you can advertise within, or you could advertise openly to anyone outside of the city.
That's correct.
So that decision is made by that hiring manager, whoever that is.
In the example you're giving?
Yes.
The hiring manager would be the city manager for fire chief, and yes, that would be his decision.
Okay.
Is that the suspension of competition case, which we have in the charter? There was a small part that was mentioning about highly specialized positions, that there is a suspension of competition, basically. I can find it on the charter.
I don't know how to answer that.
It might be called something else. I took the note as a suspension of competition.
Recognized attainment is one of the clauses that has been used in the past to effectively recognize the individual's expertise in a particular role and suspend the competition and not post a recruitment. However, there are several examples of executive recruitments where we have in fact posted recruitments, and whether they have been open or promotional, it has varied over time.
One more follow-up question. So you mentioned that, for example, if we move from band 1 to band 3, we need to have at least 2 candidates. Otherwise, we have to move to band 3 and 2 at the same time with the banding situation. So what if we have that very high-level position and we have it open to public and we only have 2 people qualified on the list?
So that's happened, and we've had to run another recruitment to give the city manager at least 3 people to consider.
Thank you.
And one other clarification I should add: for suspension of competition or the recognized attainment, that action is subject to the approval of the Civil Service Commission.
As a government employee, I completely agree with your suggestions on all of these. I just wanted to say that I'm not okay with removing something from the charter. Something should be in the charter. I'm going with the rule of 3 whole scores, because giving authority to a commission can sometimes take a very long time to make decisions. So that can also, sorry, oh, yeah. So that can also delay the position as well, and that you might lose really good candidates because of that as well. So having something in place that's constant, I think is better than having a commission decide. But everything else, as an employee myself, I agree with.
But isn't the commission weighing in before the recruitment? Like, they're just, commission, if they're being asked to approve the appropriate probationary period, the appropriate, banding methodology for the position, it's before the recruitment's done. So that once you're in the process, they're not the ones necessarily holding it up.
Yes, if we bring any changes to job bulletins or class specifications forward and we agendize them, then there is a decision at the end of the meeting. And then we run the recruitment.
It's before the recruitment, so
Yes.
like you don't have applicants waiting around for the commission to make a decision.
That's correct.
There's not even a position
But the
posted.
open position might still be there, right? There's a position open, that's why they're going to the commission.
There's a vacancy.
Yeah.
But the questions before we advertise the job bulletin, if there's any change or any question, we take we take all of that to the Civil Service Commission before promulgating anything to the public. So by the time it goes to the public, those decisions have been made. And then the HR staff just runs the recruitment according to the decision the commission made prior to promulgating anything to the public.
Right, but the position that the department needs to fill is already open while this whole thing is going on. Like, there's a position that needs to be filled in that department.
There's a vacancy.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the vacancy's already there while there's discussions going on.
Right, but our Civil Service Commission meets monthly. So if I'm a hiring manager and I have a vacancy, I know that the commission meets the second Wednesday of every month. I have a vacancy today. I know I'm going to get before the commission at minimum by the second Wednesday in November. I have sort of a timeline as a hiring manager already in mind. The commission is going to make a decision on whatever my question is at its November meeting. It has not been my experience that the commission doesn't make a decision at the end of each meeting. We walk out with decisions.
I think you've been lucky with the commissioners.
Just to follow with you, Ani, I do agree with you that there would be some language in the charter.
Question to the city attorney, so would that be possible that we make certain rule, like, the 3 whole scores as the default, unless civil commission like specifies certain other rules? Is that a possible thing to do with a charter, or no?
I think, yeah, in terms of charter language, you can write, as specific or general as we want. So that's certainly an option.
Elizabeth, I know you have to leave.
It's not even that, it's just, I do need to really digest a lot of the stuff that I just heard, for some of them for the first time, but I had also looked at some of the charter literature, and I just have to really look into it further to see. I don't think I'm ready to vote on it tonight.
Okay.
Just saying.
I just want to make sure I got you.
Right. Anyway, regardless whether I had to leave or not.
In terms of the previous charter changes to civil service, they seemed more just updating titles, positions. It wasn't really that material. Is that fair?
They did look at they did consider the rule of 3 and voted against it.
Any cliff notes on how that went? I'm only testing your memory by 20 years.
I think at the time they were considering a 2-part system with, I think, the rule of 3 for the promotional tests and rule of the band for open tests, and then decided to reject the whole thing.
They didn't have video back then, did they?
They do, actually.
Oh, is there any way we can get a link
I
to it?
think C-SPAN style, I think.
I mean, no, seriously, it'd be really interesting. I think I'd learn a lot in watching an hour discussion of that.
We can see how we can make that available.
That'd be very useful, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
So I just want to share my personal experience. I also work for the government. I work for the state, and the hiring process is incredibly long. And in fact, one of my friends, she submitted an application. By the time she invited to an interview, she even forgot that she applied because it took so long. That's how slow the process is. And I'm an attorney. There are plenty of attorneys, so I wouldn't say that's a really problem when it comes to attorney hiring. But IT, like you mentioned, it's I can tell. I used to work at private and I work for the government. The level of service that I get from private government is day and night difference. Private sector IT support people, much faster, much qualified. They can solve a lot of problems that I have. State, not so much. So I think depending on the type of position, I think the hiring manager should have given flexibility to hire the best talents. And to that extent, I am kind of leaning toward giving the civil commission full authority, and then you work with the civil commission, and then you figure out what's the best way to hire a certain group of people, and I think that would be my preference.
My biggest challenge with that, because I come from the private sector, and we definitely want flexibility, and you believe that at least in the private sector, poor performance is usually addressed right away, or long term if it happens, you have remedies. The problem here is if you have a lot of flexibility in the hiring, but you don't have commensurate flexibility in the firing, then you have the potential for where I think the report talks about perceptions of favoritism, hiring people who aren't qualified. Once they're in, and then you can't get rid of them I'd be interested to think about that a little bit.
I think Ms. Adams alluded to it, but in terms of the public safety aspect, once a year, the police department in Glendale has a community academy that residents can attend. It's about a 10-week series of informational meetings with the police department covering all sorts of aspects of the police activity and policies in Glendale. And one of the things that was emphasized when they were talking about recruiting is they don't want to just rely on, what would be considered objective qualifications, because they're really looking for a fit for the department, because our police department's very sensitized to, they don't want to take the chance of hiring what might turn out to be a rogue police officer that would get, obviously, media attention, liability for the city, and diminish the public's trust in the police department. So that's why our public safety, in terms of the police department, is so focused on, they've got to have these, when they hire someone, they've got to have someone who is really going to abide by the ethics of our police department and not end up creating a problem for the city. So that's an example of where someone might look good in terms of the qualifications, but on a personality basis or otherwise, behavioral basis might not be the right choice.
I mean,
I'm not looking to start a fight, I just.
No, but the police department also has the advantage that when you're hiring a peace officer, there's a background investigation and a psychological examination. There's other parts to that testing process that look for things other than just what you might call an objective test. It's not like you take a written test and walk in the door. There's a much more thorough process that goes into play before you can hire something or hire somebody, because you are looking for somebody that's going to fit really well with this community and the traditions of the Glendale Police Department. Kind of just transitioning off, I'm going to go kind of go here. I have some thoughts on what I might do, but I also think this is the first night that we're hearing this. This is an incredibly complex issue. I understand where human resources and hiring managers and all that come from in terms of flexibility, but I also know that changes in this can have some significant reverberations inside the organization. Because it's not just managers that are going to make this decision or live with it. It's also the people that are working within the organization that are going to live with that. And I think at least before I would land on something, I would at least like the employee associations to be able to find out what happened here tonight, because we all got the agendas on Monday, and while we may be prepared to talk about that, I'm not sure anybody else is prepared to talk to that. And I'd like at least to have them have an opportunity to weigh in, if they so choose, before we sort of go, hey, this or that. I think the rule of three, just to kind of pick on that one, has been discussed by at least 2 charter review committees, and that rule of three has remained. It's stuck, and nobody's changed it. Maybe it's time to change it, but I think, as I said, that can reverberate, and that's kind of where I was going with promotionals versus outside. When you're hiring an open position and you're looking from the outside, I don't know if a change in hiring and opening up the flexibility would have the same reverberations, and I may look at this with more of a public safety lens, so I want to make sure I'm hearing from other folks. But changing it on a promotional system could have some significant reverberations in terms of morale, perception of fairness, and all of that. And so as you open that up, it can say rule of three, and you can say that the people coming in the door are considered equal and all of that. But I'm going to tell you, everybody knows the list order. And if you vary from that list order, it's not necessarily always pleasant. So, the academic world of, hey, you get 3 names, you get to pick one of those 3, you can pick any of those 3. Well, if you decide not to go with number 1 and you go down there can be ramifications to that. And there can be ramifications within the culture. So as we discuss that, be mindful, look, I think we have a pretty darn good city, and we're trying to make it better. But I think we need to at least think about that and give those people an opportunity to say something if they have some concerns from inside the organization. So at least we're mindful of that perspective also as we go forward. But as said, But I also get, what I said, I've been on the other side of this where it's like, it's extremely frustrating when you can't hire somebody, or prior to being able to put police recruits into an unclassified position, you would get 3 names. And until you completed a background investigation, which can take months, depending on how fast somebody got their information back to you, you were locked up from getting name number 4. Meanwhile, they're getting picked up by other organizations. So moving that into a different classification basically gives you, if you will, the rule of the list that allows you to hand out background packets to a bunch of people. And as people get things in, you can start moving and hiring them. And so I'm very sympathetic to being able to, with IT professionals and that type of stuff, have something that allows you to fill positions and make sure we're getting qualified people and we can hire them quickly enough. I'm also very mindful that, as I said, we want to make sure that we do have a merit-based system, and that we don't unintentionally, remove something that then changes us from a merit-based system to a non-merit-based system where, the word fit can be used in the wrong way. When you're looking for fit because it's a skill set you need within the organization, that's a fair thing to use. If fit is, we're going out to the bars after work, or it's a personal fit or a friend, that can be problematic. And so making sure we're at least mindful of how we're approaching this, I think we need to have some thought and discussion around that. And so I can get I lived within the system for a little while, or parts of the system. I'm nowhere near the expert that these folks are over here. But as I said, I can understand where it's like, hey, you want some time to think about this, because the changes can have impacts inside the organization, both good and bad. So just food for thought.
Question, how many employee organizations within the city? Like bargaining unit or something?
We have 5 bargaining groups.
5? Would it be possible for us to hear their opinions about like this rule of 3, the changing the probation period? Would
Yeah.
that be possible?
Yes, we are meeting with our bargaining groups. We have it scheduled for October 15th. Our plan is to share with them what happened in this meeting tonight, provide them with the date of the next meeting, so that if they choose to come and speak to the committee, they will have that opportunity.
Is there any way we can ask to get that as soon as possible? I know they probably haven't produced anything, but our meeting is set for November, 6th? So the tough thing is, if 72 hours prior to November 6th, we receive their feedback, I don't know if that's enough time for us to work it into a reasonable direction, at least at that meeting, so.
We'll provide whatever feedback that they provide. And part of the thing, when we meet with them, they might not feel comfortable with that. They might not have formulated a position to share with us that we can share with them.
Understood, yeah.
So that'll be part of the ask that we'll have for them, too. So.
Also, I think from a planning perspective, at the next meeting, we have some additional items that we had discussed. Yes, civil service items, and so we would probably bringing those back, and then maybe at the December meeting, making decisions, if you're not prepared to make them at the next meeting.
I think this is actually way more complicated than the stuff we've dealt with earlier, so, so it may require a little bit of time.
Your mic.
To be continued, he said, without the microphone.
So.
Are there any further?
I just want to say that anything that the committee wants us to bring back as part of these items, I know we're going to give you the information regarding the 2004 iteration of the civil service issues. We'll bring back whatever feedback we get from the associations to you that they're comfortable with us sharing. And then, is there anything else in terms that, as far as these particular topics, that the committee would like?
I don't have anything. I just want to make sure it does stay on the agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. So to Ms. Varpetian's point, so we'll have this on the agenda, these 3 items, as well as some new items that will at least hope to kick off and give you the brief primer on those issues as well.
And could I just, Ms. Varpetian, could you just remind approximately how many more issues on the civil service that you might be bringing back, just approximately?
I think we've got another 4, but the rule of 3 may be the most complex. The other ones are, not that they're not important, but of the 3 that we heard today, I think the next 2 are a little bit simpler, and they don't have as many variations to them. So we'll probably move through those a little bit more quickly. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay.
So just in terms of a follow-up to that question, or just to make sure I have it, so we would be discussing these 3 items next time, being presented 4 items. Did you identify what those 4 items, the topics?
I can name them for you now.
Sure.
They're actually 8, so 5 more remaining. The promotional reallocation process, bumping rules during layoffs, duration of layoff and reinstatement lists, alternative procedures for appeals of disciplinary decisions, and department heads in civil service. So those are the remaining 5. And I do think we should be able to get through probably all of them, because again, the alternatives to each one of these is not going to be that many.
And then, if I'm further understanding, I'm just looking for a projection. So, not that everything's finite, but if things go as planned, the best laid plans, if things go as planned, we would bring this back in November, hear about those 5, and then vote approximately in December?
You could come to a consensus, and then I think the preference of the group is that you see actual language, so we would need some time to put those together. Or we can move forward with going to council to get their feedback. I think in particular with these rules, we have to understand that the meet and confer process also matters. So making sure that the bargaining groups are as engaged from the get-go is important. We've tried to do that with each meeting, providing them with all the materials each time, making sure that the Civil Service Commission also knows of the process, even though our meeting is with the bargaining groups is on October 15th. These are not new issues for them. These are areas that they've been thinking about all along. I think they may have their own ideas of what they would like. So, but they are a unit. So if we meet with them on October 15th, they'll need some time to figure out what they want to do within their unit, and that could take some time.
Thank you for the explanation.
I think when we started out, we were hoping to get through this in 3 meetings. If it goes beyond that, that's probably okay, because as we mentioned at the last meeting and was noted in our report to the council, items related to civil service and employment, though if the voters are going to consider those changes, they have to do it in November. They can't do it in June, so there's a little bit more flexibility. We got time on this piece of it. Not sure where the council is going to land on the other piece, so we'll know more next month.
Excellent. Okay.
Chair Flower, just so I know whether to hold my comment or ask it now, is this discussion part of future agendas, or is this part of what
Well,
we?
to the extent that we'll get there formally, I mean, to the extent that we're talking about this item and where it goes, it's not, I don't think we've drifted into that. But
When you
are
go
are
there-
are you looking to speak on other items and future agendas other than the civil?
Well, the questions I just had are related to some timing around future agenda items, but I'd like to follow your pace so I can wait till you go there.
If nobody objects, I think we're ready to move to item 8, future agendas. Denise,
timing.
please.
So the reasoning for my questions around that, just for consideration, is there was, at our last meeting, there was a motion there were 2 items that some committee members wished to discuss further. We also had public here. We had 4 public members, and I made the motion to hold those items until the completion of the civil service. So it doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like in November we'll be getting to these, perhaps even December. But at some point, I think I'm going to hold this month, but at some point, I had asked our attorney, I guess I'm trying to figure out if I need to make them, the wording is very specific after, And I think as we get through some of these topics that are easier and not to have delays in staff preparing documents for us on those two items, I'm trying to figure out if the chair has the authority. Have I gone too far?
No, I think
Not
the
too far,
only.
I'm not sure I'm
Yeah,
quite
no,
tracking the issue.
I think the only, I remember the discussion from last
I should
time.
bring it back,
The,
Chair Flower.
the only concern with that is as it relates to civil service, we have commissioners watching the meetings. We've got bargaining groups who may be attending. And the longer we delay, the more meetings they'll be attending. So for example, at the last meeting, we did have labor leaders here. I think it's important to be mindful of their time and mindful of the commissioners' time, who we know are watching the meetings. So it may be just more efficient. We've got individuals from HR who are here who wouldn't have to be here on those other issues that are not HR related. So it kind of makes sense to deal with some of the items that are grouped together that pull from the same resources so that we continue to have those people present.
Yeah, and just to be clear, so everyone's clear, if you weren't clear, I'm not reversing my motion. I'm trying to figure out a timing standpoint. So for example, in December, if we were to be done if we start at 5:30 and we're done at 6:30, and we have some idea that we could have used that other hour, that's where this question was going.
yeah.
I'm not making a motion or anything.
No, I understand.
I'm trying to be very pragmatic.
I think
Thanks.
generally we try to project how many items we could get through and how in-depth we anticipate the issues to be. So this is why we capped it at 3 items at this meeting rather than trying to tackle all 8 items at this meeting. So with every meeting, we're trying to identify how far along the committee can get given the volume. And so in December, if it looks like we've made it through everything and we've just got 1 more or 2 more items to discuss, we'll definitely backfill it with other issues as they come up. So it's never our intention not to bring an item back. We continue to keep a list and make sure that the list is current. So all the issues are discussed.
Chair, if I may. I think what Committee Member Miller was referring to was the table discussion on city attorney and city treasurer. Perhaps we can look at, kind of like we did last week. We did last month, a very brief 15-minute introduction to the issue or to the topic, to the subject matter. So that kind of started the discussion. I think it's important that we've spent so much time on other stuff. We're only, I think, 4 or 5 meetings shy of the last Charter Review Committee in terms of actual meetings that they had. I'd like to find a way to make sure we can at least introduce other subjects. We don't have to go in depth on them, being sensitive to everyone's time. But I think to do things in a completely serial fashion we're going to run out of time. And so that's my concern.
May I suggest maybe, since we know at least the next meeting will be full, can we have an agenda item would it be okay if we put an agenda item for next week to discuss whether or not to have that item discussed at the December meeting? And then it would have to be somebody who voted in the majority.
You don't need to, it's just a future agenda.
No, I know, but that way at least you're having that discussion and you can actually vote, if you need to vote.
My thought to advance the ball would be if we could just get a receive and file report on those 2 positions, so that it's not for discussion, but at least we get the material, and so when it does come up, we're more prepared to advance it, but we don't have to take any more meeting time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, if we can,
December or?
Yeah, if we can get that and then have it on the agenda for December, I think that would work.
Just, some of us like to read ahead.
Well, I do. Actually, you bring up a great point, Chair. This memo that we received on this subject, the interdepartmental communication. If we can get this thing for the next 5 in advance, I don't know if it's been drafted yet, I'm sure it's just like that.
I mean, that would be record speed. I don't know. If we worked on nothing else and maybe just the charter committee with the 5 attorneys you've got, or 4. Yeah, but there is other things.
deadlines are
We do
fun.
other things at the city, so we'll do our best to get to all of them. But we want to make sure that when we are discussing an issue, that we're fully prepared for that issue, so that, and then sometimes we're not confusing the issue, right? So we've got to make sure that we are prepared. We want to make sure that you've got all of the information you need.
Absolutely, yeah.
And these things are time-consuming.
Yeah, they are, and we appreciate all the effort.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, to your comment, did you want the receive and file on next month's agenda and then have the discussion agendized for the December meeting?
I guess my suggestion, not even a request, but if you had some of the materials already,
Yeah, we certainly have it for the
ready.
appointed treasurer, because it's been a discussion that's been had
Yeah.
before. The other piece
Even
of
if
it-
you just clearly
Yeah.
labeled background, this is for
Sure.
background only,
Sure.
and you can label it as a receive and file so that there's no action contemplated. We just get the information.
Yeah, I'll work with the staff and.
I just think that to the extent that we can get that information earlier, then we can come into the meeting and, because I think, I've been impressed how, I don't know any of the civil service stuff, even though I work with cities. Everybody in the room has kind of taken it on and asked good questions, but it has taken us time as a group to get up to speed. If we can just advance the ball a little more, so that we don't start cold.
Understood.
Every time.
Yeah, I would appreciate that.
One more follow-up question to what Mr. Garcia just explained to us. Mr., if it's a receipt and file, is that what you called it? Does that become an agenda item? Does that allow the public to speak? And if so, I might suggest you, Chair, you look at December, because we've already been told November's
The public can
full.
speak on any item that's within the jurisdiction of the committee, which would be, so if they want to talk about the city attorney every meeting, regardless of whether it's on the agenda, they can do so, so.
Oh, I thought it had to be an agenda item.
No.
Oh, okay, great, doesn't matter.
It has to be related to the charter. But that opening public comment period is for items that are within the jurisdiction of the body, but not on the agenda.
So the 4 public members who did not speak last time, it's because oral comments were over?
At that point, yeah, that's my recollection. That sounds right. I don't remember how many people were.
I think
There were some people
There
who
were
wanted to speak,
people
but
who
we
came
don't.
to that agenda item.
If I remember correctly, the members of the public who were here took the 4 minutes or the 3 minutes during the oral comment period to speak. They just chose to speak on a different topic.
Oh, there were some people, and I don't want to relitigate any of this, but my recollection is we had a very long discussion that we ended up breaking into pieces, but we had one public comment period before we broke it into pieces, and people wanted to speak again. And just because it was already a long meeting, just said, no, we've already had the public comment for that item, even though we've broken it apart into 3. That's logically how I was seeing it. All right. Anything else for the good of the order, future agendas? No? If not, motion to adjourn? Anyone?
I second the motion. I mean,
Is that a motion?
I'm supposed to make it, sorry. The motion to adjourn the meeting.
We have a motion, is there a second? Second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.